Hello everyone, Dr. Robert Q. Spideyman here once again. I'll be honest, I was born in 1986 and I admit that I am an 80s kid. So it should come as no surprise to you that when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was hugely addicted to a great TV series known as Rollergames. Rollergames was a short-lived roller derby show from the creative mind of David Sams. It featured 6 teams and it played like a regular roller derby game on a figure-8 track. Except for the 10 to 12 feet high bank curve known as the Wall of Death, the jump that they had to make afterwards, and the memorable Alligator Pit. During halftime in the post-game, they'd get a popular rock band or artist to play during halftime. Notable performances during the show's run were Rita Ford, Warren, and Deborah Harry. Although it was panned by critics, it was a huge hit with the teenage audience as well as college students. It even scored a 9 share in the New York Americana's debut, doubling the rating American Gladiators got. Rollergames had a very great production values at the time, such as helmet cams for the jetters, something never done in roller derby before. The audience really got into the action on the field. It had a magazine published and an official soundtrack for the series done by DC Gestal. It seemed like nothing could stop roller games. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Although it got great ratings for its time, the distributor, for some unknown reason, went bankrupt and thus Rollergames was cancelled. Now, although this series may have died, Konami and Williams decided to do something quite cool with the Rollergames license. Konami turned it into a pretty good arcade game, which pretty much played like the show, where you picked your team and you ran through the course. Then there was the pinball machine made by Williams, to which my friend Nicky raves is one of the best pinball machines of all time. However, what most people remember is the NES game made by Ultra Games. Well, a little backstory for you about that one. Konami was producing so many games in Japan, mainly 10 or more in the span of 1 calendar year. However, Nintendo of America has stated in the past that third-party producers can only make 5 games a year for the United States in the span of 1 year. So, Konami had to create a subdivision of sorts to get their games out to the American market. Thus, Ultra Games was born. Unfortunately, for most video game fans, Ultra Games usually strikes fear into their hearts, mainly because the early titles they have released have been pretty pathetic. Most notably, the first release of Metal Gear, the NES version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Kings of the Beach. Now, to be fair, not all of their games were bad. However, some of them were actually really good, like their arcade hits translations of Qbert and Gyrus, a really good game. Then they even adapted a great TV show like Mission Impossible. And personally to me, I was a big fan of Snake's Revenge. However, Rollergames, though, is a completely different story. It's actually a pretty polarizing game. Either you like it for what it is, or you hate the game for its obvious flaws. There are some really glaring flaws in the game. Most notably, the controls of this game are really slippery. Despite the fact that you're on roller skates, you'll find yourself crashing into walls very often, not being able to jump when you need to, and pretty much being at the mercy of the physics of the game, which can cause you to die many a time. Another glaring flaw is that you don't have any recovery time in the game, which can cause you to take multiple hits at a time, which can become very frustrating when you got a couple of bad guys ganging up on you, or when the boss of the level keeps on stabbing at you. However, the biggest flaw of this game, it's not like the TV show at any point. Sure, it's got the characters from the show, but it's got nothing else. I mean, instead of having it play like the actual TV show, you're playing mainly Double Dragon on roller skates. But I've talked enough about the backstory of the game. Let's jump in head first in the Alligator Pit known as Rollergames. Things start off inside the Super Roller Dome, and you get the commentators for the series, Chuck Underwood and David Sams, saying they are faced with an enormous problem. The owner of the World Alliance of Roller Sports, or WAR, has been kidnapped, and the 3 good teams have to rescue them. As you can see so far, the English in this game is pretty pathetic. It's affectionately referred to as English in some circles. And now you get to pick which team you want to use. The T-Birds have you play as Icebox, Hot Flash will let you play as Sly Fox, and if you select the Rockers, you play as Marty Jannetty. The game starts off with Ms. Georgia Haas making idle threats, and then we jump directly into the game. I decided to play as the T-Birds and Icebox for this review, mainly because it's the only character that I normally play as whenever I play the game. Anyways, the premise of this game is simple. Get from point A to point B by jumping over big gaps, avoiding manholes and other obstacles, and beating down some underpaid minions in order to advance to the next part. All in all, pretty much standard fare for an NES game. Later on in the level, you'll run into barrels. Lots and lots of barrels. The barrels spawn from out of nowhere. Where do all these barrels come from? Does Miss Georgia Haas have a surplus of barrels? Does she have Donkey Kong flinging barrels against us? What's with all the barrels? After the bout with the barrels, you deal with some bad attitude goons that you have to take out. Then you enter the second part of the game and have to avoid the potholes that the green men make. And then you have to jump off the ramp and onto this falling platform. But if you're even a pixel off, you're going down. Then you proceed to the end level where Ms. Georgia Haas is waiting. Firstly, you have to take out more members of her team, who seem to be gluttons for punishment at this rate. Then you get to take out one of the Jackson brothers before Ms. Haas gets all pissy and starts running back and forth trying to slap you down. Once she runs out, give her a big hit and bingo, she's done. You get to the start of level 2 and you have more bad English. I don't know what's more poorly translated, this game or zeroing. Anyways, remember me telling you about the slippery controls? Well, here you will be running into obstacles left and right, such as cones and roadblocks. Later on, you'll be trying to avoid some fire blasts coming from the sides, and near the end, you guessed it, barrels. When you get to the end, you have to deal with this helicopter that's dropping bombs on you left and right. Yeah, because when I think roller games, I think getting bombs dropped on you. After dropping a ton of bombs, the copter gives up and you end up going to level 3. Here we see the second main bad guy in the game, Guru Drew. Guru Drew is actually Miss Haas's protege, so you can bet he's going to be quite psychotic. The beginning of level 3 plays like the first one, where you have to dodge the firebombs the guys throw, the oil slicks that will trip you up, and the wrecking balls that will swing back and forth. After all that, you beat up some more goods and proceed to enter the warehouse. Now, here's where the slippery controls seem to doom the game. I mean, after this point, you're just going to be fighting the controls left and right. The game now seems to throw in more level obstacles to screw you over. Firstly, you have the waterfalls that come out of the walls. Sort of reminds me a lot of the waterfalls that you deal with in the first level of Mission Impossible, except more heinous. Then the fire blasts come back in full force. You made a couple of steep banks that you have to skate off of in order to jump to the next platform. And of course, barrels. But now they're on the ramps and one false move and you die. Then after all of that, you get to the boss where you first have to take out this high jump kicking lady while Guru Drew stabs you from underneath with a spear, which he never had during the series. I mean, he did have the Swami outfit, but midway through he became this militia leader, you know, soldier of fortune type of leader. I don't know what was worse, the storyline from that show or the Katie Vick storyline from WWE in 2002, because, let's face it, both storylines sucked ass.